Hello, everyone. Simon, I'm going to not go full screen because I just want to zoom in and out of this a little bit. I'm Simon Knott from BKK Architects. I'm presenting Keep House. It's a house in Glen Iris for a couple and their two teenage sons. I'd firstly like to just start by acknowledging the traditional owners on which we're situated today, and also the houses, which is the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and we'd like to pay our respects to their elders past, present and future. Sorry, our network's slow. But this just is a location plan here that situates the house. It's out along, it's in Glen Iris. It's on that fantastic corridor of Gardeners Creek that was the result of the Monash Freeway going through and overlooks that. It's an integral part of the site. What's important. This diagram here is actually the existing house, but it shows you the peculiarities of the site. It's on this sweeping curve of the road here. There's about and overlooks the path. This is the Gardeners Creek corridor here. There's an oval opposite, and then the rest of that corridor. There's about a 3-metre difference in rise from the oval here to up onto the platform of the house, and this unusual wedge-shaped site. One thing that's of particular interest to us as a practice is this gradient of privacy, and it brings together all of our big urban scale work, our urban design work and large infrastructure work is kind of looking at the public realm and how we then mitigate that into the private space of a residence. And this sort of semi-private space here is intrinsic to that of the balcony or the stoop, the veranda, and then the sort of more semi-private space of the living space and the fully private space of the bedroom. And this is diagrammatic, obviously, but how you mitigate those things through small little changes in levels or bench seats or landscaping is really important. There's a couple of diagrams here that just explain how we arranged on the site. It's a really tricky site to occupy because it sort of diminishes as it moves back. So getting a private space is difficult. So we created this courtyard space in the middle, and there's this protective barrier of this wall that also forms party wall. So a solid, and then this transparency. North is up the page here that allows light into that space, and I'll show that a little bit more in a moment. But also how you move around the house, the dynamism of this house. It has this anchor point of the chimney. And you sort of move it because of the circular motion of cars and pedestrians, you move around it, but also within the house as well, and how those things correlate. Views in and out of the house are really important. So taking advantage of that really beautiful landscape view out to the park, but also equally important to us is these smaller kind of internal views and how those things kind of work together. They're equally important on the site. Landscape, this big sort of infrastructure work and landscape is really important to us, and it's equally as important as the house itself and how those spaces interact. And so there's lots of little landscape spaces, but also really importantly, and we'll show you those in a moment, but what's really important is how you borrow from that big landscape view opposite, and also wind protection, sun protection, all those things that are important to any successful house. I'll just spend a little bit of time on the plan so you understand it. You come in, we retained this existing garage and effectively rebuilt it because I won't go into the complexities, obviously we don't have time, but on a site like this, it just doesn't really work for the way this res code setbacks work for side, rear, corner. Where is the corner of the site here? And we had lots of discussions with council about that. So in the end, we couldn't build this garage again in the same position, so we decided to keep it and largely rebuild it, so that's why it looks like that. But you come in through a very informal entry, and this was very much a discussion with the clients about briefing into this informal native landscape garden, and you arrive into the heart of the house. There's the dining, kitchen, living room here is the central point of the house, and the views out to the park, but also the ways that you can cross through the house, and views into different parts of the house are equally important. There's a deck out here that has a little bench across it that just mitigates that view back into the house itself. A real asset during a really sort of almost semi-professional kitchen. They're big entertainers and they love cooking, is stepping down and a slight separation into this work. They both work from home and did before the pandemic. So that was a real asset for them. And then the kids stretched out from the main part of the house is in the kids area, the two teenage sons, and they've got their own bedrooms looking out onto a private courtyard with a future spa or hot tub, which was part of the brief that the services are run to, but wasn't ever built as part of this. Bathroom that looks out onto a little micro courtyard, and then service zone, drying yard, and a guest bedroom out here. But you can see these connections through the house. So you can open everything up and the landscape then bleeds into the interior of the house and they look across at each other. And that was really a central part of the house. You go up into a main bedroom, ensuite robe, and then this wonderful sort of eyrie or roof deck. We'd had lots of jokes about the Keep house. A Keep Cup was their forever house. They had this site for about 6 or 7 years before they built on it because they bought it for the site and it was to be their house that they're never going to move from. But also this idea of the castle keep, this last place of refuge, there's something, a defendable space. And this idea of your home is your castle, where this big masonry wall performs almost like a rampart or protective barrier from this highly exposed site. So it does give this point of refuge into the house. So it was a really constant balance for us between that kind of protective space of the interior of the house, but also the publicness and the desire to get out into the park. We use lots of different techniques of computer modelling, sketching, cardboard models, and this was the resultant house here. And you can see that big, thick masonry wall that's sort of 500 mil thick, 600 mil thick, that performs that kind of sense of relief. The big chimney that anchors the house, and then this upper level, which is not designed according to res code setbacks. It's actually about just diminishing that upper story and about being a sort of dormer window. This informal garden, they grew all these plants during construction on a friend's farm. They wanted to, you know, it's a really important part of the design for them is this kind of informal middle space of the courtyard. It's not a, oh, something's gone weird on our, oh, there it goes. You can see here these kind of layering of views from the courtyard to the living area, to the oval distant, and then the clubhouse opposite that. So you can get a really good sense of how that operates here from this image. Sorry, it's just being a bit slow. That really wonderful kitchen that, again, every one of these views, you can see the landscape in the distance. You know, there's this constant kind of connection across. This is from the kids' playroom looking through the living area, the courtyard, and you can see a more protected landscape, private sort of space out there so that you're not viewed from the park as well, so you can inhabit those north spaces. A table that was designed by the client, it was milled from an existing tree that was cut down on the site, an oak tree that they wanted to retain.
1 minute remaining.
And then bathroom. Here you can see how this looks out onto a little micro court as a landscape view and the service courtyard beyond it. The workspace that again looks out to this little space here, but also distant views out to the oval. The roof deck top up above by the chimney looks out to the park. And then this kind of, you know, the house actually varies a lot in scale and size as you move around it. It is quite dynamic in the way that it evolves. Upstairs bathroom looking out over the park again. And then you can see how it occupies the site here from the drone shot and the photovoltaic cells.